As an artist, I'd call myself an interdisciplinary artist. My background is in textiles and printmaking, actually, but now I do lots of different kinds of things, and I primarily work in and using abandoned textiles, and my work is around these themes of motherhood for one, and then community and care. So how do we care for one another practically and emotionally, and how can we do that through art? So I make fiber art and conduct socially engaged projects as well. I would say it's sort of in my blood. My mom is a quilt maker, and our lineage is sort of a family of originally German immigrants who were tailors. So they made professionally made clothes and constructed garments. So I was around textiles all the time, and we sort of live in a rural part of the US in the Midwest. So I was also around a lot of sort of secondhand materials, and so a lot of my art is giving new life to these garments or quilts or embroideries, and giving them a new life as fine art objects and fine art pieces in galleries and museums. So the Midwest, you could just throw a stone and hit like an antique store or a thrift store or an estate sale, and that's really primarily where I source most of my materials. What am I thinking when I create art? I'm very intuitive, and so a lot of my art pieces or my artworks or performances, videos, whatever, they're really embedded in the material themselves. And so sometimes a particular quilt or object will sort of speak to me or reach out to me, and I'll get the idea straight from kind of the materiality of the object. And when I'm working too, the work kind of evolves, and I work very cyclical. So I will often work on a project and then revisit the same project that I maybe did 5 years prior, but with the new techniques that I'm working on in present day. And so you'll see along the breadth of my years making art, these different materials or projects or themes coming, sort of being recycled. Just like I'm, reusing materials, I'm also revisiting ideas a lot. The medium I use for this piece, I would kind of call it somewhere in between fiber art and installation or sculpture. It's kind of in the middle of those two, because I disassembled the denim and then sort of laid it out as like an installation that maybe you'd see at a history museum or like an archaeological site. But then the piece is supposed to be on the floor, so it's not hung on the wall. So it's more like a floor installation or sculptural piece. And that's not typically, fiber art typically is kind of hung on the wall, but not always. When I started working with the pieces of denim, I started to think about, the process of how denim is made, because I think that is really invisible to a lot of people. So if you don't make garments, everybody wears jeans, but nobody makes jeans. Somebody else makes them. And so I was interested in kind of dissecting this pair of jeans and finding interesting shapes. And this relates to, I've been doing this with other textiles sort of in my artistic process. So I did a piece called Need, and I dissected like this bright pink puffer vest. That's a child's puffer, for the winter. And then I did the same thing to the sort of iconic mom symbol of the baby carrier. And so I'm like dissecting these garments or these textiles into their corresponding parts. And what I really wanted to show is sort of the interesting shapes of the pieces, you know, that you would see if you were working in the factory that made the jeans, or, you know, I was really inspired by all these YouTube videos about how they process denim to get like frays, to get acid washing, because that piece in the artwork was this acid wash denim. And so, you know, they have all these big machines that roll the denim around with rocks, or that put it through these chemical processes to get the kind of finishes and washes that you would want as a designer, you know. And all of that is this invisible labor. And generally in my art making, I'm also interested in this theme of the labor that our society is kind of built on. One of those things being women's labor. And I do a lot of work about motherhood. And so it's like women's labor in the home. But I think you can translate that into any kind of industrial process as well. You know, some person somewhere is their labor is creating these sort of objects that we wear and use and discard, you know, and I hope by dissecting these pieces and having them on display in this arrangement, you'll be able to have, it'll pique your curiosity in the process of how these things were made and created, and maybe you will follow the same rabbit hole I did. That is a great question. Confession time, I actually really don't love wearing jeans. I personally am more of a dresses and skirts kind of person. And it took me a long time to find a pair of jeans I actually liked wearing because of my body shape. And I don't know, like I finally have, you know, my favorite pair of jeans, but it took 36 years to find them. When I think of denim, I think of actually, and this may be sort of the other things I'm looking at in my art studio, I think of those first pieces of denim that were like found in the ground, like that were worn by cowboys or workmen or something. I remember watching this PBS documentary about something, and they were like digging up denim, and the images are still like, I can still see this video of them unburying this denim, and it's still, you know, sort of being intact and being this archaeological artifact now. So I think denim, you know, it's ubiquitous. It's all around us, but maybe we like don't look at it too. Connects with sort of invisible, the invisible things in our lives too. Yeah, denim. The inspiration behind this my Kancan artist collaboration, it really came from the pieces that I picked out. You know, they were the genesis, and then I was looking too in other places in my studio. I was looking at archaeological dig sites. I was also interested and inspired by different ways that we can map sort of our landscapes, and I in particular am looking at how to map my domestic landscape. So since as long as I've been a professional artist, I've also been a stay-at-home mom while my husband went to graduate school. And so I have been immersed in this sort of landscape of caretaking for my kids, you know, and so I have turned to the domestic landscape as a means of inspiration for fine art works. And, you know, and I what is all around my domestic landscape. It's like laundry and my kids' clothes and piles and folding and the shapes that, are made when my kids leave their jeans on the floor, and the blankets that they cover up with. And so in my piece, I used the denim that I got from the collaboration, which was great to pick out. I disassembled it, and then the other piece of textile that I mounted this work on was actually just an old vintage thrifted wool blanket that I had been using, to like keep warm, and so I loved the bright pink colors, and I loved the contrast of those colors with the dark denim. And then I also loved, and I kept when I disassembled the jeans totally and cut them up into different pieces and made the arrangement, I also kept all of the thread that came undone from the seams. And so it's sort of a collection and an arrangement of sort of all the materials that would go into making the jeans sort of separated, into these categories, sort of like an archive of denim or a disassembling of these jeans. So